All right, guys. So this is the beginning of our first behavioral workshop for the semester. In the career fair prep workshop, we brushed up a little bit on the topic, but in this workshop, we're going to cover all the steps from start to finish on what you need to prepare for, what you should expect going into one based on the position you're applying to. And we have Eric and Sean and myself here. So feel free to reach out with any questions in the chat throughout this. We're going to be going through each of the slides. And if you have a question for anything, you can just use the Zoom feature to raise your hand or throw a question in the chat. All right, so pretty straightforward. The behavioral interview, which is usually the first part of any interview, is just a recruiter trying to see if you will be a good fit within their company. If you're able to adapt around people, work in a team-based environment, and if your behavioral traits align with the company's traits, their questions they're going to ask are usually designed to see your past behavior and how you manage to work in certain environments and how you were able to deal with different how would I put it? Just different situations that kind of tested your performance and ability to succeed and how you overcame them and succeeded. So they'll use those questions to get those answers to see if that would kind of resemble what they're looking for in an applicant. And for preparation, you're going to want to recall everything on your resume because that's what they're going to base their behavioral questions on typically. Not the technical aspects, but usually when you're working in groups and if you say you had experience at an internship or just work groups at school, etc., they're going to tailor their behavioral questions to those specific environments you've been in and see if they align with the company's interests. So, coursework, work experience, leadership, teamwork skills. And you want to be as specific as possible when you're answering their questions. Don't kind of embellish your answers because they're usually very skilled and trained to see right through that. So as specific as you can, the better. And make sure whatever example you give for your answer reflects positivity on you and doesn't have a negative outcome. That should be a given, but they might try to stumble upon a certain event. So just make sure that everything on your resume reflects a positive outcome of yourself because they will ask you similar questions. And yeah, so you're going to want to provide everything in detail. Don't generalize, don't embellish the answers. Be as specific as possible. And you're going to want to, we're about to get into several questions that we didn't go over in the career fair prep. But when you look at these questions coming up, try to think of different examples you could use as an answer when you're asked these questions. Because more so than not, an employer or a recruiter or engineer, most likely a recruiter, is going to ask these specific questions. They're by far the most general and popular questions asked in any technical or any behavioral interview. So you're going to want to think of different examples when looking at these questions of your experience so far and different examples on how you can use these so-called examples to your favor in answering these questions. So I am going to pass it on to Eric now.
Hello, everyone. So for knowing your environment, you have to make sure the position you are applying for there's specific questions that they ask you depending on the position they ask for. So if you're applying for a managerial position, then you need to provide examples that show leadership skills. And for a position in fast-paced environment, you would have to provide answers that show your ability to quickly adapt at a moment's notice and that you are able to multitask at the same time. So some common questions that they ask you during behavioral interviews are whether you prefer to work alone or with others. So they want to see if you're adaptable, able to work well in a team or with others. And sometimes they want you to work alone because they want to see that you're independent and can solve questions on your own. And then other times they want to see that you're flexible and able to help in a team group setting. Have you held a leadership position before? Describe the position and outcome. So they want you to see, they want to see if you're a leader and can lead people to solve certain problems at the company or certain things like that. And there is a major difference between being a leader and not being a leader, obviously. So being a follower will just lead you to um, just help the leader pretty much. The leader has to round up everyone and overcome the problem. So tell me a difficult problem you had to solve and how you approached it. Problem solving will be a part of any position. They want to see whether you push situations off to a higher up or if you have initiative to handle them. So that ties back to being independent and things like that. I'll pass these questions on to Sean.
All right, thanks. Hello, everybody. Going on, tell me about a time when there was a conflict at your work. And this shows your ability to resolve conflicts, but also that you have the initiative to handle things yourself. You're not just pushing things off to somebody else. They want to know that you'll take ownership of problems. And, a lot of us are going to be, we've been in school and we don't have the most, some of us don't have the most work experience. But, unless you just kind of came from a cave or something, you've been around people and you've had conflict and you've had to handle it at some point or other. And you should be able to think of something that you can describe how you were able to resolve it. Why do you want to work at this company? And this shows your motivations for wanting to work there, whether you'll be a long-lasting employee there. And the answer to this, a lot of it's going to come down to research. They're going to want to know that you've looked into the company, you know what they do, you have an idea what their culture is. If you haven't, that's not going to reflect well on you. Somebody, a presentation the other week was saying, that's not necessarily a deal killer, but it's a strike against you if you don't know anything about them, and you want to show that you've taken the time to look into them. And like a lot of the other answers here, what you've learned about them is going to tailor your answer here. What is your ideal work environment? And here you want to say that you prefer to work in a team-based environment, but you're flexible, you're adaptable to different work situations. And they want to know that they've got somebody who's flexible, not set in their ways because work situations change. They need to know that it's somebody who can work with, who can go with the flow with them. Do you have any questions for me? And this again is going to come down to you're having researched the company. You should have learned enough that you have some things that you want to ask more specific things about. Maybe you even know the answer. You just show that you did your homework.
Right.
Tell me about.
Oh, no, go ahead. Sorry.
Tell me about a mistake you made. And this shows that you own your mistakes, that you don't blame shift. You take responsibility. Everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's expecting you to be perfect, but they need to know, are you somebody who can admit when they're wrong? How do you like to spend your off time? And also research here to get an idea of the company's values, and your answer should match that. If it's a really family-oriented, traditional values kind of place, Um, you might talk about volunteer work that you've done, activities that you do outside of work, and this can also show, are you a pretty motivated person, or are you somebody who likes to lay on the beach all the time? What are your strengths and weaknesses? And, again, match your answer to the company from having researched them for strengths. Weaknesses, you got to have an answer for this. They used to say, "Oh, I can't, I don't think I have any." Companies are smarter than that. And you want to have something, be honest, but also say what you're doing to improve it. And maybe the weakness can be presented as a strength. I, the old cliche one was, I've worked too hard. The company might not want you to be a workaholic, but you can say something like, I maybe get too intense about what I'm doing sometimes, have to take a step back.
All right. So when we're answering these questions that we're getting, after Sean and Eric provided pretty much the basis of the general questions that you're going to be asked, whether it's those questions that you're being asked or any behavioral interview question, usually the question will state something like it wants you to provide a situation, such as if you were going to get a question like, oh, well, tell me about a time where you were in the work environment or in school and a massive conflict arose, and how did you solve it? So there's usually kind of different ways to go around this question and answer it, but from what we found, and usually the most popular method of answering it is the STAR method. And of course, STAR is just an acronym for situation, task, action, and result. And you're going to want to go in this specific order when providing your answer. And yeah, again, this can be applied to almost like 70-80% of behavioral questions. So after this, if you go over the recording and look at those frequently asked questions that we just provided and try to use the STAR method to think of different examples and answer the question using this method, it's going to prove to be to your advantage because recruiters already know about this. And if they can tell that you're using it when providing an answer, it's extremely impressive. It shows responsibility. And basically, it's very straightforward as well. So you're going to start off describing the situation or the event you were in or task that you were completed and or a task you accomplished. And then after that, you start describing that said task by the goal you were working towards or the outcome you wanted to achieve. After that, once you establish the foundation of the situation and the outcome you're trying to end with, you start describing the different actions you were taking to get to that end. And just to describe the entire situation. And yeah, this one's big. Make sure the whole thing is primarily focused on yourself. You don't want to, of course, you're going to want to include other people in the situation, but you want to make sure everything comes back to you positivity wise. So it shines a good light on you. And right after, you're going to describe the result. So just the outcome of the situation. And this next part is the most important, of course, is the what did you learn from the entire situation? How exactly did it end? Right? So this part will wrap up that question that they asked. And you're going to tell them how exactly did it end. Obviously, it's got to be positive results. And what did you learn going into the situation and leaving the situation? And what do you think you accomplished in it? So as accomplishments, you could just put just different traits like, oh, well, I figured out how to adapt and maneuver around working in different, just like critical, intense situations when there was like just time deadlines I had to deal with. And let's say a co-worker was like super stressed out and I was relying on him to get some work done so I could get my work done. And after resolving the situation, it helped my skills on how to work around different conflicts in a team environment. So it goes a long way. And yeah, because the technical interview part in an interview is obviously the hardest, but you don't want to get shut down in the first stage, which is the behavioral part. Um, so once you get all this stuff down and how to kind of ace these behavioral interviews, then it's so repetitive that it becomes easy at that point. You're expecting what to be asked, you know how to perfectly answer these questions so it makes you sound relatable. And after that, all you have to really worry about is studying for the technical part, which we all should know how to study for those when you're looking at different positions and what they require in the position. So, yeah. And all right, Ryan, if you want to take over this one.
Ryan couldn't make it to this meeting, remember?
Oh, sorry, Eric. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay,
I
yeah.
forgot he's not here.
All right, um, so an example answer using STAR would be the question would be, tell me about a conflict and how you approached it. So for the situation portion, you would say, I was working on a small engineering team during my internship last summer, and we had an important deadline approaching. Toward the end of the agile cycle was our sprint deadline, and it was clear our team was behind with only 2 days left to deliver. So then the task would be that you were responsible for implementing the user interface for the payments workflow. To complete this, I had to wait on the designer to provide an updated asset. When I approached him, he said it would be done when it's done. I couldn't afford to walk away. I needed to meet my deadline. So that shows drive towards what you want to accomplish. So then the action that you accomplished was that he was stressed and overwhelmed with current workload. So once you noticed that that you were not able to criticize his work, the stress eased. You then asked him if there was any way to help him, and then the result was that he apologized, thanked for the help, and then delivered the updated asset later that day.
Yeah. So just as Eric said, that's just a pretty clear cut answer using the STAR method. And as you can see, ended with positive results. Um, an example like this is exactly what a recruiter is looking for. And this is just because we're in UPE, this is a technically or a technical based answer. Obviously, this can apply to any position within any field you're going into or applying to. But yeah, definitely after this session, you should go over your resume and the questions we provided and try to take time and see if you can apply the STAR method to all these questions or the questions that the STAR method can apply to and use examples in your life, whether you were in an internship or you weren't, or you can use different school projects if you were in um, just any class where you worked with a group and you could just use different scenarios that you guys were in if you were coming up on a deadline, how you maneuvered and got everything done. And yeah, so that pretty much covers everything for right now. Eric and Sean, do you guys have anything you want to add?
Well, I asked in the chat if anyone wanted to unmute and use the STAR method to answer the question that we had up there.
Okay, which question was that specifically?
The conflict one and how you approached it. I was wondering if anyone else had like any examples of how to answer that question using STAR, any of the members.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if anybody thinks they can take a try at it, it's pretty straightforward. And if you want to use a situation that you've experienced in the past and answer it with using the STAR method, then feel free to go ahead. All right, well, I'll just take that as everybody's got a clear understanding of the STAR method. So that pretty much wraps up today's workshop. We're gonna throw the
Yeah, just one thing. I just wanted to say that
yeah.
we gave you some good examples of questions here, and you can Google, you can find behavioral interview questions, and there's a lot of them. Some of them might apply to more managerial or sales things than we'd be looking for, but there, there are some you can find. There are some there's some with answers, example answers online too, and you can look at those, and you wouldn't want to try to memorize those examples, but you can kind of study them a little bit like templates and learn from what makes them work, because what makes this all work is putting some time in preparing for the interview and thinking about how you're going to answer this and being ready. That was it.
Yeah, exactly. That's absolutely perfect. Because if you can kind of study, like Sean said, study different examples to answers of these questions, then after you do a good amount of repetition with them, you can then know how to when apply your own experiences and examples when asked pretty much any of these questions. And as 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 well, the more you do it, the more fluid it's going to be, and that'll come across the recruiter, and they'll know exactly that you're very aware of the situation you're in, and that you took down all the information you gained from it, and you could then apply it to the next time you face that situation. And it goes to show them and yourself that you're able to kind of live and learn. And once you deal with very tough situations, you know how to at a time's notice fix what's wrong and know better for next time. So yeah, no, it's kind of all a bit of a puzzle, but once you fit it all together, then you know you'll start to notice that all behavioral interviews aren't as intimidating as some people might think. But yeah, they're all a bit repetitive in a sense, to where once you figure out the gist of how most are, then it's very simple. And then you'll be able to get past them all and then get on to the technical interview part, which is the part that will land you the job. So, but that is it. And we got a few announcements. Our weekly lead codes, which are hosted by Jose Isiano on Wednesday at 6 p.m. We have our next one this coming Wednesday, and we were gonna do our lead code competition through HackerRank, but as everybody knows, midterms are going crazy this week and the week before. So there's been super low attendance on Discord as of recently. And although we had a lot of people that were able to do the competition, we figured it'd be best just to push it back another week. So mostly everybody that is or was interested will have an opportunity to join. So that's pretty much going to be on trees and tries. And we're going to allow everybody that wants to take a try at those specific questions. We're going to give them 2 days with the question to try to submit their answer on HackerRank. And at the end of the 2 days um, submission trial, we're going to pick the most time efficient answer out of everybody's. And then of course the winner wins a month's subscription to Nitro or Discord Nitro. So that's pretty sweet. And we're gonna do that probably 3 more times after next week. So, or maybe 2 more times. So if you're not able to get to the competition next week, then don't worry, we're gonna have another one the following week and the week after that. And yeah, and we actually have another workshop next week. So after this, we're done with the behavioral part and we're moving on to the technical part. So next week's technical interview prep is going to be significantly more rigorous than the career fair prep or this workshop. It's going to go deeply like in detail and in depth on how most technical interviews are, how the interviewers, or most likely the engineers, depending on which position you're applying to, what they're going to ask you, how to kind of analyze the job post online and what to expect, and when you have a good feeling on what to expect in a technical interview, how to approach that, what to study for, so we're pretty much going to cover all that and set you up for success in that final stage of an interview. And yeah, that's going to be next week on Thursday at 8 o'clock. So those are the upcoming announcements. Of course, we're all going to be back on Discord after this. But yeah, if nobody has any questions, we're going to end the meeting. But does anybody in the chat have any questions as of right now? All right. So that wraps it up. And yeah, of course. So these are forms of communication. As most of you know, the email at the bottom in case you want to get a hold of anybody, or the website, and different social medias like LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If any of you aren't on LinkedIn yet, then definitely do so. That's a massive way to network, especially if you're within UPE, because you'll see everybody on that profile in LinkedIn for UPE, and you'll notice how many people are interacting within that. And it's very good to be a part of that. So you can just see more than what most see on LinkedIn regarding different jobs and positions open and just different networkings you can get a part of. So, all right. Well, that's going to be it for today, guys. We appreciate you coming. And yeah.
Well, thanks, y'all, for attending.
Thank you for the informative meeting.
Yeah, no problem. All right, guys. Good luck finishing up the rest of the midterms.
Yeah, good luck with those.